Back in the 80s, I had an older cousin, not much older. She was like 5 years older than me, I guess. Not I guess. She's 5 years older than me. She got a brand new phone, and this is in the 80s, so I'm not talking about a cell phone. I'm talking about a landline phone, a phone that had a receiver that you hung up on a base, right? And it was a Swatch phone. Now, if you don't know the brand Swatch, let me just hip you to what Swatch was. Swatch was like for the cool kids. It was a watch brand. I think it was Swiss made, and it had all these bright colors, and sometimes the faces had numbers, sometimes they didn't. The face was kind of big. It was like different from like other watches because like most of the bands were plastic. It came in so many different varieties, but it was also very 80s still at the time. So the colors were bright. The face was big. It was experimental with its, design. Well, to a certain point, because, it was basically the same watch, but different colors, different designs on the face or whatever. It was interesting, and it was, it was a sought after watch. And I think they were like $45, which meant it was $1 million to most of us, because back then $45 and $1 million were like equal. Because unless you came from money, $45 in the 80s was a lot. But she got a Swatch phone, which was crazy because both the base and the receiver were see-through, which you never saw. That was just so cool and innovative, and it was hot stuff. And like when the phone rang, part of the receiver, when it was on the base, would light up. Like you could see lighting within, I don't know why there were so many things within the phone and the phone base. It was just like all these wires and coils and all this stuff. But then, there were like, I guess, splashes of color here and there. Not a lot, just, here and there to make it look interesting. Sort of like how the watches were with some of the design. It was really of its time, but in a sleek and cool way. Not just was it cool because it was a see-through phone and it lit up when it rang, but she pointed out that you could pick up the base of this phone and still have a conversation with the person. So like if one person is talking on the receiver, another person could pick up the base and talk on the phone as well. Like it was the craziest thing ever. I haven't seen anything since. Not that I've been looking, but I had never seen anything like that then. Of course, I think at the time I probably was like 10 years old or 11 years old. So of course I haven't seen that before. But it was just so amazing. And I had decided right then and there, I am going to get a Swatch phone because this is the coolest thing my eyes have ever laid themselves on. So I wanted a Swatch watch. I wanted to get a Swatch phone. I wanted to have all this cool stuff too, just like my cousin had. Like I don't know if she had a Swatch watch or not, but this phone was just like so totally cool. It was the coolest thing I thought she owned. Now, of course, if I'm 10 or 11 years old, that meant she's like 15, 16 years old. So, she's a child too. But to me, she was just like the coolest ever. Now, just so that you're, updated, I never got a Swatch phone or a Swatch watch, even after I was able to afford a Swatch watch. Now, of course, the prices went up, and over the years, even all the way until adulthood, I kept tabs for a long time on Swatch and the prices of their watches because for some reason, my adult self still wanted a Swatch watch. Now, I did not like keep tabs like every year, all year. Like it was not an obsession, but every so often I would go back to, looking up what's Swatch doing, whatever they designed, just there were they were not far, far, far from my thoughts, but they were not everyday thoughts. I can't even say they were every year thoughts, just every now and then I would think of them because I would think of that freaking phone because that phone never left my head, obviously. I even told my daughter about it. And, my daughter's an adult now. So clearly, even without purchasing that phone had an effect on me. It stayed with my thoughts for almost my whole entire life, which is crazy to think that, some of the things that we encounter in our lives, even as children, like even something that's fleeting, something we never owned, just something we've seen a few times, like it can like affect us forever. And that's just insane. It's just insane. I mean, honestly, like people, not just products, people we meet once can affect us like that. We meet them as a child and then that just never goes away. It's just crazy. And I guess I thought of that story because recently I was talking about some things that, were common in the 80s or experiences that we had in the 80s that, like she asked me, like, what did that feel like? What was it like to blah, blah, blah? And these are things that we just took for granted because, it was our lives. It was stuff that we lived. But it didn't dawn on me that there were things that I just never brought up with her that she would not be able to relate to the feeling of. Like, I know in theory, there's things that she's never going to be able to experience. I know that in theory, but she was curious about what it would feel like or what it sounded like or, just different experiences that I had. So I thought of this phone, even though I've told her about this phone before. But I thought I'd share this with you because I don't know if you knew that this phone ever existed, even if you were around in the 80s. But if you weren't, I know that you probably don't, because the idea of even a base and a receiver is probably foreign to a lot of people now, which is so crazy to me. But it is, and this is where we are. So I thought I'd just describe that phone. I'm sure you can look it up. I haven't looked it up before I even recorded this, to see who's selling it, to see if it still exists, just to see. I'm sure it exists somewhere, People are always selling their old stuff. So if you get a chance, you should take a look at it because it was quite the novelty back in the day. And who knows, maybe I'll go pick it up.